Hey, it's Jeff with DaringDino.com. In this video, you will learn how to create a random color material in Blender. I'll cover how to create a random color from a range of colors, how to create a random color from a few choices, how to use the random value to change just the hue, saturation, or value of the color, and how to color objects based on their location in space. So let's get into it right now. I'll be making all these materials available for free if you subscribe to the newsletter at daringdino.com/newsletter. So just a heads up there. Also, I made this array of icospheres using a plugin called Random Object Array, which is available on the Blender Market, and I suggest that you check it out. All right, so let's switch into compositing mode, and let's make a new material and call it Random Color Range. And we want to add a converter color ramp and plug the color into the color here. And we also want to add a input object info. And what we'll be using is this random value to plug into the factor. And then what this will do is make each one of these objects have a random color from this color ramp input. So let's make it a little bit more interesting by making the first color, just a slightly orange red, and then the second one a pinkish. And we can make it even more interesting by switching it to HSL and then going far. And what this will do is go as far as possible around the wheel to the second color. So it's going all the way around to the orangish red. So then if we preview this, we've got random colors between these two colors, which is great. So obviously you could control it by making the different flags different, and that's all you need to do for that one. So that's the first material. All right, for the second material, we're going to call it Random Color Choice. We're going to steal some of the stuff that we used for the random color here. So we're going to steal these two nodes and select them and Control C to copy them and switch back to our color choice, and let's paste them in and connect this up. Now instead of HSL, we have to switch it back to RGB, and we're going to make this constant. And let's make these colors very different so that we can see what's happening here. So what should happen now is it's going to randomly pick between these two colors, and if I preview, that's exactly what it does. So you can think of these flag positions as a percent. So this one, let's just set it to 0.5. So it's randomly going to pick between these two, and since it's 50% green and 50% red, half of them should be green and half of them should be red. And you can add as many other flags as you want. We could add a blue color, and then it'll be 1/4 red, 1/4 blue, and 2/4 or 1/2 green. And if we preview, that's exactly what we see. So this is our random color choice material. Okay, so let's make the third material, and let's call it Alter HSV. Perfect. And let's also set it to have a fake user so that if we delete it, it's still going to be around later. Okay, so let's add a color, hue saturation, which is hue saturation value, plug that into the color, and let's see what that does really quick. So nothing crazy, but if we change this to be a green color, we can change the hue to be something different from that green color. And then let's also add an input object info. And we can plug the random into the hue, saturation, or value. So let's see what it does to the saturation. So if I preview this, it's going to give each object a slightly different saturation. And if I plug this into the value, each one will have a slightly different black value. Now it doesn't really work for the random hue. I mean, it does work, but it'll just pick a random hue, which is not necessarily what you'd want to do. What I found to be very useful is to add in a converter math and then set it to multiply and plug in the random to the top value and the value into the hue, and then let's multiply it by, say, 0.1. And then what you can do is you can have it pick, a group of colors like different shades of green. And it's kind of weird because it's basically picking the color opposite of the color wheel. So if you want red, you'd have to pick cyan, and it'll pick random colors from there. So that's how the alter hue, saturation, and value material works. For our last material, let's call this one position. And this one I think is the most fun. So let's add input object info, a converter, separate X, Y, Z, and plug the location into that. Converter math. And we're going to give ourselves some room here. And let's duplicate this node and plug the X value into here and this value into here. And let's also add a converter color ramp. And we'll have to make some more room. All right. And put the value into the factor here and the color into the color. For these math nodes, let's set this first one to be multiply and by 0.1. And for the second one, we'll make it add and 0.5. And the color ramp, we'll use something like what we did before. So let's make the first color this nice bright orange. And the second color, we will use a nice bright pink. And then we'll use HSL and FAR to get that wide color range. So what this will do, if we preview this, is give each object a random color. And each object is not a gradient. Each object is a solid color, which this effect is really cool. So how this works is this multiply node is kind of the scale. So if I set this to 1, it's very, very shallow. If I set it to 0.5, it's a little bit wider, but still really shallow. If I do 0.15, it gets a lot wider. And then if I set it to 0.1, it scales out even more. So for this one, I might even need to do 0.05. And now you can see it's spreading across too much. So let's try 0.1, and that works pretty well. And this add value, if I set this to 0, you can see how it starts in the middle and goes towards the right. So if I add 0.5, it moves it back to the left. If I add 1, it'll move it even further to the left. And you could use any of these X, Y, or Z values. The X is going to obviously make it move in the X orientation. If I use the Y, let's cut this and use the Y, it will work from the top down view. And then if I use the Z, it will be from the front, going from the top to the bottom. So that's really cool. I hope you learned a lot about creating a random color material in Blender. If you create a render with this method, feel free to let me know on Twitter at daring_dino or in the comments below. Don't forget, if you want to get free resources and great tutorials like this straight in your inbox, sign up for the Daring Dino newsletter at daringdino.com/newsletter and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.